Okay, disclaimers. Really, we're going to talk about stuff that impacts small, medium businesses. So large organizations, we'll deal a little bit with individual impact of individuals because actually there's a relationship there, which we'll actually talk about that as well. But our focus is on what we see as our client base, which is small, medium businesses. Okay? Also, my opinions. So if you really want to see what's going on as far as what the bigwigs say, just Google IT transfer 2013. I did, that's where I got most of my material. Oh, wait. And you'll get value here. So this is really from our perspective, a lot of this stuff. So. Okay, first of all, the good news. We don't have to talk about Mayans anymore. Yay. The bad news, still no jetpacks. As far as I'm concerned, the future is not here until I have a freaking jetpack. It was funnier when I thought about it. Okay, first of all, the cloud. Here's the thing. Get over it, it's here. Okay? It's kind of like social media was a few years ago. We just accepted it. It was part of our everyday existence, our everyday planning, whether or not you know how much of an impact it has on what you do and how you do it, it's here. It's no longer as sexy as it was. It's no longer as bizarre as it was. It's now part of our strategy. When we talk to organizations, when we talk to individuals, it's here. Okay, now, what's not here, and this is what we were saying last year, more questions about stability, because everybody had minor outages in 2011. Microsoft had them, Google had them, Amazon had them, everybody had them. Guess what? Everybody had outages in 2012. So if you're looking for a 5 nines available solution, your generic cloud solutions are not going to by themselves provide that, because everybody has outages. The problem is, if you have 1,000 networks out there, at any one day, one of them is going to have an outage, all right? Because it just happens that way. But if everybody is using the same network, whether it be a Microsoft or Google and Amazon or whomever, if they have one thing go bad, it cascades everywhere. And that outage could be where somebody did a deployment wrong. It can be where there was a malevolent hack going on. It could be anything. But it's still there. It's still an issue. We also talked about the first tier applications, email, storage, that kind of thing. We're marching towards commodity. They're there. Few companies truly require and remember, small, medium businesses, truly require their own email solution. Whether they do a Google Docs or they do an Office 365, do the Office 365, whichever. They will suffice. Now, examples can include or exceptions can include law enforcement, some of the medical community because of the HIPAA requirements. Okay, there are exceptions to that, but even with a lot of these companies are starting to implement solutions aimed at that. So, for example, Office 365 now has a configuration specifically aimed at companies dealing with HIPAA. Okay? And one of the other things that happens a lot is when companies are looking to change their methods from A to B, and they say, well, B has to be absolutely this secure, this well done, this whatever. You look at A and okay, A wasn't. Now suddenly we have to be this way with B. Grandfather. Okay? A lot of organizations were accepting the risks and the imperfections that they had because that's the way they've had it for the last 5, 6, 7 years. But now that they're going for a new one, now it has to have a much higher level of security, reliability, failover, all that kind of stuff. But it's going to need that whether or not it's a local solution or if it's a cloud-based solution. So, integration. And what I mean by that is, a couple years ago, if you were doing cloud, you had to have these special clients that connected to the cloud for you. Or you had to have this tool that synchronized so that your data would be at both places. More and more, you're going to see where you don't know where it is. And what I mean by that is the end user experience. I click on something, it came up. Where's the data? It could be in this building in another server, it could be on my device here, it could be up in the cloud, it could be wherever, I don't know. And I get back to Microsoft had a videotape, and I wish I kept it, because this would have been pre-95. This would have been early 90s. where Bill Gates put in an appearance at the end of it, a very, very, very young Bill Gates. And the comment that he made was an off-the-cuff comment that essentially said, I want people, when they click on something, they don't care where it is, it just comes up. Okay? We're all in that now. We all want that to happen. If an end user clicks on information or clicks on an icon, regardless, or a tile or whatever, the result they see is the result they expect and the result that they should get regardless of where the information or program is installed. Okay? We're starting to get there. Right? More vertical applications make the move to the cloud, especially true in the small medium business. There's a lot of companies that had product that you could purchase a license for and install. I mean, you guys are in this boat, where you have third parties that are offering a vertical application that used to, get the disks, install it, patch it, manage it at your location. Now they're saying, no, we don't want you to do that. We want to use our cloud version. Why do they do that? Because then they don't have to worry about whether your server's okay. They don't have to worry about anything. They have to worry about one big implementation of the technology. And usually they can do this at a much lower cost because their support costs go down dramatically. Here's the catch. As long as they've redesigned their application so that it works effectively in the cloud. Because if they didn't, it's not going to be clean. It's not going to be pretty. Okay? So if you're looking at that situation, in that circumstance, where somebody is saying, hey, that application you used to have a server for, we got a cloud version of it, be very careful to review that application and to run that application in the cloud before you commit to anything. Because in some cases you may say, oh yeah, we had that customized report builder. Yet we don't have that one in the cloud version. Because everybody's data is up there, and if we gave you the same report builder, you'd be able to get everybody's data. You don't want people to see your data, do you? So you can't see your data either. Okay? And it's going to be told to you as if that's a great thing. But you have to be very careful. So the opportunities are going to be there to save some money on this, but you also may lose some control. Okay? So here's the question. So is the cloud more hackable? Then what? That's the question. Again, I'll get back to the whole issue that most networks are not secure unless someone put in explicit effort and cost to make it secure. So what ends up happening is that any network can be hacked, any cloud service, anything can be hacked. The big guys up there are very appealing targets. The little guys, not so much. You absolutely increase the risk if you go to a cloud-based solution, because if someone can hack Office 365 or Google Docs, they get the keys, they can get all this information, but you're going to be one very small minnow in a big pond. Similarly, if you have, and we had a client who they had an application such that their customers had to go to their server in order to get data from them, and I won't go too much into detail here. And the way the application was written it had to have little or no security. And so it had to go that way, or else they'd have to redo their entire application, which they weren't ready to do yet. So the pipe was open, but nobody knew about it. Somebody found it. And within a day or so, we had all sorts of hacking that was going on, and was getting beat up and all of that kind of fun stuff. So the key question on the security side is, first of all, are you secure locally before you compare to the cloud? All right? And we also have to recognize everything has a risk. There's no such thing as a non-hackable service. When you start talking about security, keep in mind that that's a really very, very large term that can mean a whole bunch of things. So if, for example, we have all the locks, all the pieces part, let's move this to a physical metaphor. It's a house. And the house has tripwire security, it has infrared, it has this, it has that. Okay, somebody has to get into the house somehow if they live there. And if they get in through a key and they hide a key under the rock by the mailbox, okay, that's a vulnerability. If they hide the key and let somebody else know what the password is or the passkey is, that's a vulnerability. If they leave one door unlocked in the back so that somebody can, so there's exceptions to that even though the system is incredibly secure. And if the system is incredibly secure, there's still people who can find their ways into it. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not knocking this company at all.
No.
Because, and the odds are, if you look at it from a diagram standpoint, every secure measure they take makes it that much more difficult. It cuts down on the likelihood of someone with this skill level cannot get into this network. Someone needs this skill level and get into this network, so on and so forth. But the cloud in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that something is automatically more or less secure.
So the people, the banks and the governments and the credit card companies, they all they pay for extra levels of security?
Absolutely, just like a bank does physically. Okay. Or any company that's concerned about their assets. You know, it's an investment to protect your assets. And just like physical alarms or security or the like, the same thing is true from an IT standpoint. That makes sense? And again, it kind of gets back to you're either going to pay for it and have it, or not pay for it and not.
Is this customer supplied equipment, or is this supplied by the data server company?
It can be any way you want it.
Okay.
You know, in some cases, companies have their own IT department that can provide those services and do it. Other cases, companies will have a third party do it. Other cases, you could have one company who will actually supply the service and another company unrelated who will attempt to compromise it. You know, the whole Tiger Team concept. And then come back and say, yes, we got in, and here's how you fix that. You fix it, try again. Whole bunch of ways you can do this. The question is, how much resource are you willing to put in to make sure that happens? Or that's protected. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Any other questions on this? Okay. So, this is really kind of interesting, and it's going to happen. Right now, you've had this integration or migration of devices, the computer, the phone, and the TV. Those are the three most popular devices that any business or any person would use in order to receive information. And I call communication as information. So TV, that was information. Not all programs, not all channels, but now you can watch TV on your computer. Okay, and not just TV channels, but you can also use like Hulu or YouTube or whatever and actually watch TV programs. Your phone can do all sorts of computer programs. Your TV, and this is going to be a big push over the next year or so, more and more custom information can be brought through televisions. Your televisions are going to get more and more intelligent, and much more information can be passed across those. Same thing's going to happen. And my understanding is there's rumors, Apple, what was it called? Did they call it Apple TV? Yeah, Apple TV a couple of years ago kind of landed with a bit of a thud. There's rumors that there's a new service that's going to come out through Apple, similar to the iTunes, but going through the TVs. And my point is that the difference between these three devices, between these two devices, is already blurring, right? Between these three devices, it's going to continue to blur. So you're going to have devices where the primary role is this, but it also does these things as well. Now, a lot of this is going to be consumer-based, all right? So the consumer is going to be the one who's going to be dealing with these things. But remember, a lot of us provide information for consumers to take and perform action with, preferably to purchase something. Used to be websites looked like websites to the PC and to your phone or whatever. Yeah, maybe it'll look okay, maybe not. The large increase of purchases this past holiday season was mobile. A lot of people are now willing to buy stuff on their phone. They weren't willing to buy stuff on their phone as much a year ago. The same kind of transition happened a few years ago. People would shop online, but they'd order by phone or they'd order at the store. And then suddenly, yeah, no, they'll buy online. Now they're buying online, but now, then it was, we'll shop on using our phone, but we'll buy on the PC. Now it's no, we'll shop, we'll buy, we'll do everything by a mobile device. Yeah.
Do you consider computer, tablet the same thing, or tablet something?
Yeah, I'm going to call that, I was tempted to make computer, tablet, and make the difference. And then I said, no, I'm just going to leave it that way. I think they're all part of the same family. Okay. Another thing I think is definitely going to be happening is social networks go corporate. And what I mean by that is you're going to see more and more companies who are going to try to have internal applications that actually look like Facebook or LinkedIn or the like. It's already happening. All right, if you take a look at SharePoint 2013, which is a huge product from Microsoft to encourage sharing of interactive data or internal data and all that, a big part of the 2013 release is its ability to basically mimic social media. Now, why do we do that? For a couple of reasons. One is so that the organization can actually share experience, information, update each other on what's going on in a softer way. All right, so that we can actually decide which employee we want to follow. And I want to be very clear here, I'm talking about business, I'm not talking about social. So if someone is having trouble, I am having trouble reviewing or balancing these two reports or whatever, putting it on a social and internal to the organization social media network might be a little more effective in terms of sharing the information. So the SharePoint 2013 is going to look more like a social media. The second reason is because everybody's using social media. So if you have something that kind of looks very similar inside your organization, it'll be a little easier for people to pick it up and understand. So what we've got is, as I was mentioning, so companies are going to try to buy in or build into that social media. And that's going to be critical because getting internal people, the end users, to actually use your technology is critical. And so if you can use a technology or a metaphor that they're used to, that's going to be very important. Again, the best example I can show you right now is SharePoint 2013. I've talked to some actual IT and business management people about this question, and all of them have essentially said, and these are for larger organizations, but one of the comments they've made is, yeah, we want our people to interact more in terms of sharing the business experience and what's going on, what they need to have happen, because in a lot of cases, you have this silo mentality that I can't do my job or I can't do this until I talk to my immediate or this person or that. And in some cases, that's overkill. You don't really need that. People know how to do their job, they know what to do, so it's going to be interesting to see how this happens. Now this is just starting this year. So I don't foresee this to be a huge hit immediately, but I do think it's something that's going to happen. Web presence goes platform neutral. Again, 5-6 years ago, you built a website. It was so PCs could use the website. That was the goal. Somebody has a Mac, yeah, they should be able to see the website too. Somebody has a mobile device, yeah, that's cute, but let's make sure that the PC can use the website. Starting in 2014, even by Microsoft's estimates, mobile devices will outsell laptops and desktops. Okay, now, that's not installed numbers, that's sales. But there's no way you can get around the fact that mobile devices are becoming more and more, and by that I mean tablets, I mean phones, iPhones, Droids, whatever, that those are going to be the first line of usage. So a company that is looking to have a web presence, especially if you're looking to get money from people as part of that web presence, you have to accept the fact that people are going to be using iPhones, they're going to be using Droids, they're going to be using iPads, they're going to be using tablets, they're going to be using Macs, they're going to be using PCs, and every one of them will feel absolutely legitimate in using that technology and will expect to have close to the same experience. If you go to a vendor site and it turns out you have to go use another device to actually complete the transaction, that experience is not going to endear you to that vendor. You know, user experience is critical. How did the user end up liking going to your site? Were they able to quickly get the information? Were they able to quickly get that transaction done? Whatever. If you're at the position where you need to have, you're enticing the vendor, the customer, you're pulling them, all right? That's going to be critical. So you're going to have either one, multiple versions of the website that take advantage of the technologies and the real estate. And by real estate, I can put a lot more on this screen than I can on this screen. Okay? So either I have this screen here and I just use my finger to move around, which just never works nicely, or I have a lot less information on the screen, in which case, guy on a laptop, you know, it's like, why can't we have more information here? Or I have to have two versions, recognize the technology that the end user is using, and push them appropriately to the right web page. All of these are legitimate strategies, but you, as the information provider, have to choose. The exception to that is corporate. If you have a corporate website, you may decide or be able to put in some kind of standards to say everybody has to use this. This is especially going to be true in Salesforce or on-site service people, because you might give them the devices. So you can say, okay, it has to be, you know, you have to go with an iPad, you have to go with a Windows tablet, because our applications and our websites are built for that. That's okay, you've got a captive audience there. Okay? Any questions on that? Yeah.
Yeah, what's a developer to do? So for example, what infrastructure technologies do you see as important here? For example, maybe HTML5, I don't know what else would come to mind that might help address this issue.
I'm not a huge developer from that standpoint. I think definitely HTML5. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is something for my wife. She's a big advocate of in using HTML5 and stuff like that. Yeah, it's one of those that's tough to deal with, and I constantly hear her complaining, like, "Oh, this browser doesn't do this, and I hate this one," and all that. So it is a headache for developers, and it's just one of those you have to kind of look at what your target audience is, get a good estimate of what they're going to be using, and kind of steer towards that direction. Pretty much the way she's been looking at it.
And here's
you need a good view, a strategic view of where the industry is going, basically.
And here's the answer: everywhere.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not to be flip, but and I use this term a lot with our customers because it's annoying, and I'm good at that. Whatever decision you make, there's going to be some of circumstance and customers and or providers who are going to say that won't work for us. Or you're going to come up with a solution that's so expensive that it's going to be cost prohibitive. Again, we're talking about small, medium businesses here. To come up with that solution that's going to fit all things. And then 2 years from now, it's all going to be obsolete. So, how do we do our social, our marketing? We do our marketing in a very specific way that takes advantage of blogs, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, luncheon hours, mailing, and all that. And I've had conversations with people who have said, there's a different way to do it, there's a better way to do it, because you're not reaching these people or you're not reaching those people. And I say to them, you're absolutely right, we're not. And at the end of the day, we've made that decision and we're comfortable with that. Because to include, let's say we get 80% coverage of who we want to talk to. I'm just throwing that number out. It may cost us 10 times that amount to raise that number from 80 to 90. It's not worth the money. So we have to make those kind of choices. It's similar from a safety standpoint. You may not have that luxury. You may have to talk to X number of people or percentage of people, in which case that's your lot in life. You have to do that. What's the best steps you can do? You know, but the important thing is to have that kind of discussion up top before you commit to that technology. So that you've decided, here's our goal, here's what we have to be able to do with this technology, will we be able to do it? And the problem is that today, unlike any day, any other time before here, the consumer has a ridiculous number of choices in terms of how they consume the data. And they're going to have a ridiculous number plus 147 6 months from now. Okay? And part of the challenge there is that there are some people who are still using PCs that are 10 years old. they expect to still be able to get to stuff. There are some people who are going to adapt the technology that came out this week. They still expect to get to stuff. And how do you do both? How do you please both parties? You can't. Yeah. And my point is essentially, don't get depressed about it because you're still connecting to people in ways that you couldn't even imagine 5 years ago. We're actually toying with, when we've talked with a couple of companies that are in some of the web development areas, we may make a topic, a lunch and art topic just on this issue, because we think that this is totally, completely underrepresented out there. This is a huge issue for, again, for companies who go, yeah, we have a website. Okay, that's great. How's the website do for someone on an iPhone? And they look at me and go, well, we have a website. You know, and the answer may at the end of the day be, yep, we have a website, and it looks funny on an iPhone. That's cool. But we want to have that kind of conversation. Storage. Where do I keep my stuff? Storage is not the problem with the internet. It's when people move or retrieve or look at the stuff that they've stored. If you actually look at the amount of stuff that's actually stored on the internet, and I forget the number, so I'll just say it's 11. If you look at the amount of stuff that's stored on the internet, it's really not that much, relatively speaking. But if you look at the amount of information that's being transmitted over the internet, it's ridiculously high, especially when a lot of it is streaming video. People are listening to music, people are watching, you know, YouTube, they're watching TV, they're watching whatever. But the storage is getting more and more interesting. I don't want to get too much into, because this is where, and Kevin and I were talking about this yesterday, and it was like, okay, we don't want to get geeky here, but it's so tempting. So the whole idea with storage, when you look at that, is how accessible is it to me? Okay? Can I get to it when I'm online? Can I get to it when I'm offline? Can I get to it when I'm using, it's starting to sound like a Dr. Seuss thing. Can I get to it regardless of which of my devices? I've got my tablet, I got my phone, I've got my laptop, I've got another laptop and a desktop back at the office. No matter which machine I'm on, can I get to it? And if I'm not on any of those machines, but I'm going to borrow one of your guys' machines, can I get to it? More and more, we want the answer to be yes. Microsoft has made a huge investment on this as part of the whole Windows 8 and Office 2013. And one of the things that's happening here a lot is Microsoft is, so I've got my Windows tablet. Okay? This is a Windows RT tablet. It's what they call the Surface. And which means that it has the Windows 8 look and feel, which works really nicely when you're just using your fingers. Okay, very good touch interface, works great. If I store any of my documents using SkyDrive, which is now integrated with Office, or will be officially integrated with Office 365 in the next release in the next month or so, I have full access to those documents here, whether I'm online or I'm offline, and whether I did work here on another device. Okay, not good enough for you. Okay. Then I've got, but that's a Windows RT, so that doesn't have all the functionality. The price for that is, I think, $4.99 starting price. Or I could use a full-blown Windows tablet. This actually is full Windows. And I actually had it shut down, so it takes a second to boot up.
Quite literally a second.
Yeah. Same interface. This will run full versions of Office. This guy will run limited versions of Office. Still better than what you got for the most part on an iPad or a Droid. And if I work on a document here, I come over here, that document's on this machine, with all the changes and all that kind of fun stuff. Okay? Starting price of this was about $1,200 when I bought this about a year ago. I think they're about that same price, give or take. It's basically a good business laptop is the cost here.
They said sales of that are slow.
Sales of these are just starting to come up. The sales are not overwhelming so far as the Microsoft, the tablets, and all that kind of stuff. And this is going to be a slow buy-in. I'm absolutely convinced. That said, I think it's fantastic. I think these are great. And I'll get to why in a second.
Bob, is there a difference between those two machines?
Yep. Yeah, this is running Windows RT, which
I understand, but I mean the machine itself, they look similar.
Yeah,
Their
they do.
construction.
They do. Well, this one has the detachable keyboard and all that. This is actually a Microsoft product. They built it. This is actually a Samsung product. They built it. So, and it's kind of like other vendors are building these as well, so you don't have to go necessarily to Microsoft or whatever. Here's my Windows 8 phone. Notice anything? It's the same look and feel. This has Office on it. I can go and take a look using Excel, PowerPoint, Word. I almost said Word perfect. I can use those programs to modify. Yeah, I updated myself on that one. F3 is help. But I can use that to go look at my data and change it. And again, it's the same look and feel. My Windows 8 laptop here, it's not touch enabled, but it will give me the same, and right now I've got it split into two screens, but same look and feel, same thing. So, what this does is I now have eliminated where it's stored by using the SkyDrive integration. And the SkyDrive integration is tight. When you save a document, it lists, when you want it on your computer, your SharePoint, your SkyDrive. You specify SkyDrive, boom, it syncs automatically. It's done. It's set up as part. It's set up for you as part of, in this case, the Office 365. Okay. So now we've made it so that you don't need to know. If you're online, the stuff's local. Or excuse me, if you're online, it's cloud and local. If you're offline, you can work on it locally, and then when you connect again, it'll synchronize the stuff back up to the cloud. I'm not using mine. I have to go borrow somebody else's machine. Windows to go. Have you ever heard of this one? This is a USB stick, USB 3. Okay, it's a USB 3 stick. If I stick this into a laptop and I boot off of this, it will bring up my Windows 8 computer. Not yours, mine. It'll disable access to your hard drive, but I will be able to run my Windows 8 machine on anybody's laptop, server, or whatever. And it saves it all on this. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was not so much to say, go out and buy these. This is basically just a Windows licensing. I don't think there's any exotic cost to this thing. But look at all the options. Look at all the options that you've got. And then the final is, let's say I left this in the wash, so I don't have this either. I can just use, if I can borrow your computer, I log on to the cloud and I can get my data that way. So no matter how enabled I am in terms of access to information, or Amish I am because I don't have any of my stuff with me, I can still get to the data. And it's still backed up and synchronized and all that good fun stuff. Yes?
So then what's the advantage of that flash drive you're holding there if your data's on SkyDrive and you could get there anyway if you came and used my laptop?
In this particular instance, there's not a huge, except for if you were offline. And let's say what I can do is I can use this to configure to have a whole bunch of diagnostic tools, support tools that you don't have necessarily. So if I go on site, I don't have to install these tools on somebody's machine. I can boot my machine here. It'll be on the network, look like it's a machine, and go to town. In addition to that, when you talk about, it used to be that we talked about storage, we talked about basically three things. I have a hard drive, I have a RAID array, or I have some kind of network or storage device. Especially with Windows 2012, it is all getting blurred. And the bottom line is, if you really want to look at corporate or cloud-based storage, you need to talk to somebody who's familiar with all the options that are out there. Or ignore them until they become a little more mature. There's a lot of changes that are happening. But there are just incredible options, you know, that we're dealing with. We're working with one client that has some of the new Server 2012 stuff. Is just incredible what you can do without the huge investment that you used to have. Desktops and laptops. This is, Microsoft's not happy. Because for the most part, outside of server and server programs, which are very, very critical, they were a Windows and Office kind of company. That's what they based their sales on, a lot of revenues, all that kind of thing. Well now, remember what I said about mobile devices? You're going to start out, are starting to outsell the laptops and desktops. Well, that means Microsoft has to do something about it. And they tried telling you to buy more laptops and desktops, and you did not listen, which is really nasty on your part. So now what they're doing is they are moving into the tablet business, both in terms of other vendors developing them, as well as them developing their own. As well as they're making another pitch, and I think it's a legitimate pitch as far as the phone goes, plus the cloud service, the Office 365 and the like. And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to turn themselves away from a PC and laptop into more of a service company. Azure, Office 365, Intune, those are just some of the stuff that's coming out. Microsoft Project is going to be cloud-based. CRM is already cloud-based. But the key thing here is, again, from a Microsoft standpoint, their core is disappearing in terms of its importance to the rest of the world. So they're trying to switch into, so that at least some of their core product, Windows Office, is going to be available regardless of which platform. Now, slow sales, but one of the big things you hear about companies is BYOD, bring your own device. People are bringing iPods, iPads, iPhones, Droids, tablets, all that kind of stuff, and getting work done using them because they're effective and they're efficient. And IT people who are supposed to maintain the security are having a tough time because there's 20 different products there. Well, if we can standardize on one level of product, such as this tablet, apparently I didn't recharge the battery, but we go with this tablet and Windows 8 for the laptops and desktops and Windows Phone, I have to teach people how to use these once. I have to teach people how to use Office once. I have to teach people how to access their data once. If I use an iPhone, I have to use various programs in order for me to use, assuming we're an Office shop, how do they use Word? How do they use Excel? How do they modify their data? How do they connect? How do they use a VPN? How do they use remote desktop type connections? Depending on what. Here, I have to teach people once. That's the gamble Microsoft's making. It's a huge gamble. That and switching over with Office and to a lesser degree Windows into monthly subscriptions. Huge, huge gamble for Microsoft. Okay, we're doing okay. And I think, I will say this, I've been working with 8 since March. We've been working with Office 365 and Office 2013 since August, September or so. I like it. I think this works very, very well indeed. And if you guys have been with us for the past few years, you know if we don't like something, we will say, this sucks. This is cool. This works. Now, I will say this. Windows 8, and this is kind of the conversation you and I were having beforehand, to upgrade an existing non-touch device to Windows 8 just for the sake of having it under Windows 8, in my opinion, ain't worth it. You're not getting a huge bang for the buck. There are some improvements, but Windows 7 is fine. But if a person is working with touch-enabled devices, why not have it so that the interface is the same? So you don't have to teach, oh, you're in Windows 7. In Windows 7, you do it this way. Plus, before too long, the Windows, or excuse me, the touch-enabled is going to be everywhere, one way or the other. Okay. Which kind of gets into the whole Microsoft. This is key for them in 2013. Can they move away from just being a PC-based? Again, ignoring the server level stuff for a bit. Their cloud-based services is a huge undertaking. It's going very well. Their tablet and phones, jury's out. So far, it's but that's not unusual for Microsoft to have initial adaptation rates. The thing I'm confused about with Microsoft is right now their marketing for their Surface is all aimed at kids. There's very little business marketing. Now, there's a lot of people who say the RT version of the tablet should not be used in the business environment. And I think it can be used in a business environment, but with eyes wide open, because it does have limitations. Whereas in theory, the end of January or February is where the Surface Pro, it'll look the same, but it's a full version of Windows, will be out. And full version of Windows 8 tablets are out from other manufacturers now. It'll be interesting to see whether or not companies buy into that. Okay. But this is going to be a critical year for Microsoft. You know, and there's people who are saying, hey, Microsoft's over, they're done with all that. The people who are saying that, quite honestly, pardon my French, and I'll say this, but you're an idiot. Now, is it a given that they're going to come back, they're going to succeed? Absolutely not. But if you look at the condition that Apple was when Jobs came back, Microsoft is 10 times healthier than Apple was at that point in time. And Microsoft is, to a certain degree, making some of the same dramatic changes, although more on a business level, more aimed at businesses than individuals or consumers than Apple did. But I would not count them out at all. I think this is compelling. There's been a couple changes on Google, and I'm highlighting these two. And Kevin, I'm going to ask you to talk about the ActiveSync a little bit. But Google is making some changes that kind of make them so that they don't play as well with other technology as well as they used to. One is Postini. Postini is a very well-known anti-spam service that Google bought 5-6 years ago. And about 6 months ago or so, they basically said Google's not going to resell it anymore. They're only going to be using it for Google customers. Which is really, they're literally saying we're turning off our customer pipeline. So it's only going to be used for the internal service, which I find really interesting. And then the ActiveSync?
ActiveSync, anyone who set up a cell phone, a Gmail, on an Exchange server, anything like that, both, you know, from any kind of device, from an Android, from an iPhone, from an iPad, any of those, they all use something called ActiveSync. That's a technology that Microsoft developed in its standardization for transferring calendar, email, contact, and administrative functionality from a server down to a device. Google happily used this technology for years. Anyone could take their device, use ActiveSync to connect to Google servers, and you would have a perfect flow of information between them. Google just recently announced they are stopping that for everyone except the paid Google Apps accounts and the, like, some government and education accounts. So what that means is, right now you can still pair a device with Google using ActiveSync. When they turn the switch, you'll no longer be able to do that. The device that's already paired will be okay. It's just if you ever want to do a new one, you can't. They're replacing it with a 20 or 30-year-old email exchange protocol and some other protocol for syncing the calendar and the contact information. The other piece of this that they're doing, and this was just an outright, they declared war on Microsoft. I mentioned they're still keeping it around for some of their devices. They're keeping around the Google Apps accounts. They're keeping around the education or whatever. What you won't be able to do is, you know, Bob and I have our nice shiny Windows phones. They are killing support for Windows Phone when this happens. There will be any kind of connecting to Google. So yeah, they basically declared war. There will be some workarounds and things you can do, but they've officially given up support of it. Yeah, and I say Google, obviously they have their own line of everything anymore. So they made this nice open environment, they made these great products, they got everyone in, and now they get to close the doors behind everyone. People that want to stay with it will stay with it. Anyone else? Be damned.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you can almost see the strategies. Apple worked with their devices and then is pushing out They're adding more and more web services. iTunes certainly has a lot more prominence and importance than it did before. The TV service, so they're going from device to service. Google's exactly the opposite. They had services, now they're going to device level. And then you have Microsoft, who's just trying to stay meaningful, you know, for lack of a better term. So you have these three companies who are all trying to, they're all trying to kill each other, you know. But they're doing it in different ways. And it's interesting to note all three of them have different strategies for accomplishing this sort of thing.
Are you saying like a Gmail account on an iPhone, you won't be able to do that?
They are supporting the iPhone stuff. They're supporting iOS and Android. They're just saying no to Windows Phone.
Yeah, keep in mind, Google made this announcement very quietly. This was not something that was going to, hey, everybody. And the fact that they're going to, if you've already paired your device, it'll stay paired. So they're trying to kind of slip this, you know, under the radar, so to speak. But they're definitely, and again, they're not replacing it with a new method of doing it. They're replacing it with an old. So, it's interesting. And get used to this. There's going to be more and more companies that are going to start saying, okay, if I leave all of the connecting ability open, people are going to use my product because they can do everything. And then other companies are going to say, if I close down my service, the only people who are going to be able to use my service is my customers. You're going to see those two conflicting mentalities, sometimes from the same company, is going to go back and forth. Dell is in the buying mode again. They made two major purchases recently. Sonic Wall, that routers, firewalls, devices, all that kind of fun stuff. And also Quest. Quest is a little more bizarre. They have a lot of management and measurement tools for networks and SQL especially, some really good SQL tools. They're trying to become more and more of a service company, where they will actually, they're trying to do what we do to a large degree, where they will monitor and manage your network and all that kind of fun stuff. However, you don't get a free lunch from Dell. Point that out. Now, at the same time this is happening, quite honestly, we've seen a noted decrease in the quality of their desktops. We stopped buying them a year ago because we had about a 20% failure rate. Maybe not 20, like we bought like 50 desktops over a year period, and we had about 7 or 8 of them like that had service calls. And the service call was done, they worked fine, but that did not happen.
I heard Dell is potentially for sale.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I'm not 1,000% sure. By the way, they're high-end bill. Yeah, whether or not that's going to happen or not, I don't know. Okay, there we go. And then a couple of the cool things down the road, just wanted to end with. 3D printing. And Jim, I actually wanted to attend the Greater Cleveland meeting that happened over the weekend. 3D printing, anybody familiar with that? That literally is, you can take an HP LaserJet or inkjet printer, and you can make it so that it will actually print out a 3D object. You can do it with resin or some plastics or the like. So if someone emails you, here's the model file, you can then build it physically. So I want you to think about that for a second. If someone made a sculpture piece of artwork and then someone else scanned it, they could send you the file and you could literally print out it's in your hand, it's 3-dimensional, it's made of wax or a graphite thing. That's the object. Same exact look and feel. And these things start right now to get a jury rig one for a couple $100. It's a couple $1,000 if you want a serious one. These are going to do nothing but get better and better. And so when you think about it, if you want to get something manufactured, now you have to contact the manufacturer who will make it for you and then send it to you. Now you could truly download product, physical product, and either print it out at your location, or I think you're going to see, remember the copy station, you know, the FedEx and UPS stores that have the copiers? Just think of that. They could have the really advanced 3D products, 3D printers, where you would basically download the file there, and you could download, you know, a lamp or something along those lines, because they're going to have, so the whole isolated manufacturing cost gone, The distribution cost, the transportation cost, gone. Incredibly big. You're going to start hearing more about it. We've got several years before it actually goes
There's a
live.
startup in Manhattan coming online now. It's got
Yeah.
several hundred of those machines.
Yeah.
They're starting to provide that service.
And I think some places in Europe are starting to do that as well.
So instead of pirating music, I can pirate.
You can pirate pirates. The Connect style interface, we've talked about this a couple of other times. That's where a machine will actually see your gestures and interpret them. Kevin and I were just talking about this. There's actually a PC version, and the PC version, in theory, can actually notice, see the fingers and the joint movements. So that instead of keyboard and mouse, you can actually do this in the air, and it will respond with the appropriate motions. So we're kind of getting rid of the keyboard and the mouse interface and even the screen interface. That technology is going to do nothing but get better. Google Glasses, basically where you have the display screen except they're glasses, and for some reason I made the Batman sign here. I don't know why. But no dancing. Think about this for a second. If you have something similar, the Google Glasses are still a year or two away from any kind of release yet. But if you have glasses where essentially the screen is up here on your glasses, and then you have the interface which allows you to essentially mimic the air, you now have eliminated the keyboard, the mouse, the screen interface. You've just freed up your desk. And you also have succeeded in looking really weird to anyone who sees you using this system at the time. Especially if you have Wi-Fi and you like to work in your backyard. Automated driving. I think Google is big on this one, where they actually have the cars that can drive themselves. Yeah. Okay. And this, again, this can be huge as far as the impact. Yeah, it's okay. And actually, there's an add-on where the car will text for you, so you can. And I am not losing hope. I still want my jetpack.
But realize one more thing that I just thought of this. Something big that's also been going on. I don't know if you guys have heard any of the reports, whatever. The way the internet's built on its IP system called IPv4, that is running out.
Yep.
IPv6, this is something that, if it isn't on this page, it should be. It's only because he wrote that when I wasn't in the room.
I don't like him very much.
Yeah, IPv6 is something that should absolutely be on the horizon. If I remember right, the Asian pool of IPv4, that first number, you know, it's some number, ... That first number, they don't have any more of those first numbers anymore. They ran out a year or two ago. Europe is either out or with like one left. The North American pool, I think, has 2 more top numbers left. Those will expire within the next year or so.
The IP numbering system is how we identify devices from each other.
And every device has a unique number. There are ways around it,
Yeah.
typically called NAT. There are, for lack of a very technical readout, NAT breaks the internet. It was only a stop measure to prolong the use of those external IPs. The biggest argument I see with, and I have a friend down in North Carolina who's a big IPv6 pusher, and the biggest argument I have with him is, all right, I don't do anything with IPv6, what changes? Well, you can't use the internet. Well, what part of the internet can I use? Well, none right now. So there's like very little motivating factor, like why should I do this? And it's not a right now you'd be hurting, it's down the road. So it's one of those you should start planning a little bit ahead to start working toward making yourself IPv6 compatible.
Now here's the thing. Now this is for the non-geek. Okay. Almost all Windows devices, Mac devices, Droid devices, all that come with the ability to do both IPv4 and IPv6. The problem is that every network you're on, like right now, anyone who's connected wireless is using their network here at Hattie Lorlem's. If you're at your office, you're using theirs. They have to be set up to use IPv4 and or IPv6. Everybody's set up to use IPv4. And they have the ability to be set up right for IPv6, but they probably haven't done it yet. Okay, so that's going to happen because it's literally, we have 4 numbers to identify it versus 6 numbers. So we have a lot more space in the IPv6. So it's our IP, instead of our physical cliff, it's the IP cliff.
IPv6, some things are already starting to use it. A lot of IT departments have no idea how to configure it yet in this area.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd say I've started down that road. I've actually converted my house over. I'm running dual stack, both IPv4 and IPv6. I know you're shocked. It's really not that difficult to set up. Some of it is based on equipment. Some routers have support for both running dual stack. Others you have to do like a workaround known as a tunnel, where you force all your IPv6 traffic to go over an IPv4 tunnel. Still doable. I'm just running dual stack. So there's a little bit more overhead that way. It actually works very well, and if and when IPv6 is implemented, things will work a lot better. It's much more streamlined. You don't have to worry about NAT breaking things. Firewall rules become way more efficient. Everything just works better. It's just, the hardest part, is just, okay, IPv4, I can access the internet. IPv6, I can still access the same internet. So why should I bother?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Bob Coppedge. And Kevin.